Hello, and welcome to WINNOW, a couple's close reading of the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm Owen Gemmer.
I'm Isabella Gemmer. We are married, and we love to talk about books together.
In this podcast, we are doing a slow, careful reading of the Iliad and the Odyssey, starting with the Iliad. This episode is about Book 2.
Book 2 of the Iliad.
It is infamous, and many people find it very boring. We'll hopefully try and make that not the case and convince you why this book is actually, I think, pretty pivotal in terms of setting up a lot of what is to come.
Yeah. It gets a bad rap, Book 2, but only like half of it is a little bit boring.
Yeah. So let's get to that. Let's do our little summary game. If you remember, we are going to try and summarize the whole book, but go sentence by sentence back and forth so that we just have to take turns trying to remember the next thing in line, summarizing simpatico.
Okay. How about you go first?
Okay. The book opens with Zeus up on Olympus deciding how he is going to grant Thetis her wish and bring death upon the Achaeans.
So to do this, Zeus sends Agamemnon a dream that comes to him in the form of Agamemnon's trusted counselor, Nestor.
And the dream, basically, Nestor says to him, hey, tomorrow morning we should go full on, and Zeus has blessed that we will sack Troy finally. And so full on attack. Everybody get ready. We're going.
So Agamemnon wakes up the next morning. He's like, let's do it. We're going to go get Troy today. And he assembles a council of all the leaders. He tells them about his dream, and they're like, okay, I guess we're going to do that.
Nestor, even the real Nestor, makes a point to say, like, well, you're our king. Like, of course, if you saw this dream, of course it's true. We, the audience, know that it's not. But Nestor's like, yeah, like, great. I trust you very much.
Agamemnon assembles all the troops, like the whole army, and he tells them that they've been at this a long time and they haven't really made much progress. So maybe there's a kind of no hope.
You see, this was a test Agamemnon devised. He wanted to see how courageous his men were and if they were cowards and would just happily take the excuse to go home, or if they would, be manly and would go to war, even though their leader wanted them to go home.
Yeah. And the troops hear Agamemnon's speech, immediately start getting in the boats to go back home.
It's pure chaos. Everybody's running around pretty stoked. And there's just like, all right, we're going home. It's been 9 years. We're all sick and tired of this. Peace out.
Yeah. Totally backfires on Agamemnon. And then Odysseus is there amidst the chaos, and Athena comes to Odysseus, and she's like, you need to kind of put a stop to this. This isn't what's supposed to happen.
So Odysseus runs around the beach, and every person he can find is trying to sort of tell him to stop being cowards and to get ready. And then he reconvenes sort of the army back together.
He gets everyone to kind of pause. And then there's a guy who pops up. His name is Thersites. And he is like the most annoying, most hated guy, apparently, out of everyone.
And ugly.
Apparently he's also ugly. He's ugly too. And he gives a speech taunting Agamemnon. Basically calls him a little girl.
And kind of echoes all of Achilles' arguments, where he's basically like, yeah, like, we've been at this, like, we got enough gold, like, we're done. Like, this is worthless.
Yeah. But then Odysseus puts him in his place, both verbally and physically.
Yes. Chews him out, beats him up, spits him out. Get out of here, you ugly fool.
Yeah.
We're going to war.
Then Odysseus gives a whole speech reminding everyone about the good omen that took place like 9 years ago. Before they left to go to Troy 9 years ago, they were performing some sort of ritual, and a snake-like creature came out of the woodwork, and they watched it eat 8 baby birds and the mother bird. And they took it as an omen that Zeus was saying if they stayed at Troy for 9 years, then after 9 years, they would see success.
Right. And so since it's the end of the 9th year, they're like, all right, Odysseus is like, it's our time. We're gonna do this. And all the troops are like, all right, we're going to do this. Let's go to war.
So they offer sacrifices. They eat a bunch of nice food, and then they're off.
Yes. So this then transitions. The narrator has a sort of mini invocation to the muse, asking for the muse's help in recounting all the army of the Achaeans. Kind of admits, like, I could never recount every single soldier, but I'm going to go through sort of all of the leaders of each of these kind of troops and contingencies that have come. And then it's just a really long list
of names and how many ships are owned by which people.
And which cities they came from and what their cities are known for and who their leader's father was and who their leader's cousin was. And it kind of goes on and on and on.
Yeah. But then the perspective shifts from the Greeks, the Achaeans. It shifts then over to the Trojans, and the Trojans can see all of the Greek ships coming, basically, and they start rousing their troops, and everyone's getting ready because the Greeks are coming.
Yep. And so then we get a catalog of all of the Trojan troops as well. And then the book ends, basically setting up big battle's going to start.
Yeah. It ends quite abruptly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, here's the troops. Boom. See you later.
End of book 2.
Where should we start? Again, we're going to try and kind of go through some of the bigger picture themes and ideas that, you know, if you've never read this before, if you're reading along for the first time, or if you're not reading along and just trying to get a sense, you know, what would you say one of the kind of main takeaways from this is?
Well, the first thing probably to talk about is how it can be quite confusing what Agamemnon is doing.
Yes.
When he gives his speech to the troops. He's testing their morale. He's testing, you know, how much energy they have and if they're cowards. But it backfires on him. Yeah. And if you're not paying attention, and if you're, depending on what translation you're reading, it can be hard to track what's happening.
Yeah,
there.
I'll admit I had to reread a section like 3 or 4 times in a couple different translations, because all of a sudden, right, like Agamemnon's first speech with the other counselors is like, yeah, let's go to war. And then his next his next big speech with the whole army is like, we're going home. And then everybody's, you know, panicking and going home. And like, it took me a really long time to figure out exactly why that switch happens. And the description of it is literally like 2 lines. So we found a couple small passages that are pretty subtle. So I'm going to actually read from the Lattimore, because I find, again, it very kind of simple and straightforward. I found it really difficult to understand in the Chapman. So in the Lattimore, which aligns with the Greek, this is about line 70. So this is right after Agamemnon has described to the rest of the leaders what the dream said to him. So speaking, the dream went away on wings, and sweet sleep released me. Come then, let us see if we can arm the sons of the Achaeans. Yet first, since it is the right way, I will make a trial of them by words, and tell them even to flee in their benched vessels. So it's just like that, really quick. Since it is the right way, I will make a trial of them by words, and tell them even to flee. It's just like 2 lines where he's like, actually, I'm going to first test them.
Would you like me to read my translation?
I would love that.
We must call the sons of Greece to arms, but first I shall test them with my words, as is the custom, and order them to row the fleet away. And
then you said there was another moment where Odysseus later on kind of like clocks and reminds people of what's going on.
Yes, it is later around Greek line 190. Odysseus says, "You do not understand what Agamemnon intends to do. This is a test. He will soon smite the sons of Greece if they should fail." So
if you're not paying attention like I was, you can miss the fact that Agamemnon is, trying to test his army. And I will just go ahead and just straight up say, I think this is an awful, stupid decision. Like, what is he trying to gain from this? Especially especially after book 1, where he just had this power struggle with Achilles and his whole army kind of saw him lose an argument. Like, why would you test the morale of your army at this moment? It seems so counterintuitive. Like, you want to exert your authority, not sort of like show your hand by like, ah, gotcha.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to do a reverse psychology thing, and he's not realizing that all the men are just way too tired to understand what's happening. It has the wrong effect on everybody.
Right. Because like part of me is like, what does he even want to gain from it? Right? Like, let's imagine the two different scenarios, right? The scenario that actually plays out where the men listen to him, they obey him, and like, all right, we're going home, and they're excited about it, right? In that case, he gets obedience, but then he doesn't get the war, and so he loses control, he loses authority. So that's obviously a loss. In the other scenario that it seems like he wants, where his men disobey him, he's like, we're going home, and they're like, no, we want to fight. Sure, they prove their courage, but then he also loses his authority, because then his men are basically mutinying and saying like, no, king, you're a coward. We want to fight instead. So he seems to want his army to undermine his own authority by disobeying him. Yeah. He's going to like debase himself in order that the army might elevate itself. But in so doing, he's just debased himself and shown himself to be an unauthoritative person.
He wants to inspire them to be self-motivating. He wants the motivation to come from within them. I think that's what he's trying to pull out of them. But he doesn't realize that they don't have that in them.
Right.
They're there because he's telling them to be there.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So it seems to be an utter failure. And the chaos is pretty... I think it's kind of funny a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some pretty good similes again with like the troops swarming around like bees, and there's a lot of different interesting imagery of kind of the troops all moving towards their ships and all that.
Yeah. And a lot of language that talks about the way everyone's moving as waves, either crashing upon the shore or like fleeing from the shore.
Yeah.
And it's really good language, I think.
Yeah.
Because it also... It conveys that sense of how many of them there are and how big of a group this is.
Yes. Yeah. And obviously, like, this is skipping ahead to the end, but I think one of the purposes of the catalog of ships that many modern readers find boring is to talk about the scale. Like, that seems to be a pretty big goal of this whole book, is to establish like how massive this war is, both again in terms of the emotional stakes and then also just in terms of the sheer size of these armies, where it's like this person, and they brought with them 80 ships, and then this person also brought 40 ships, and it's just like, I'm sure somebody's done the math on like how many ships,
how many total,
but it's probably in the multiple hundreds, probably even close to 1,000, I would guess, just by the length and how many of them were, like dozens and dozens of ships.
But it's interesting to see in all the chaos who actually seems to have some level of authority.
Right.
And that person is mostly Odysseus and also a bit Nestor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if your translation does what mine does. It calls Nestor godlike.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's around Greek line 60. Agamemnon's recounting the dream to everybody. I had a marvelous dream that came through the ethereal night while I was sleeping. In its appearance, figure, size, and shape, it looked most similar to godlike Nestor. Last episode, we had talked about godlike being attributed pretty much only to Achilles.
Mine, the Chapman, says, "Here, friends, a dream divine amidst the calm night in my sleep did through my shut eyes shine within my fantasy. His form did passing naturally resemble Nestor. Such attire, a stature just as high, he stood above my head. As words thus fashioned did he relate." So it doesn't use godlike there.
See what Lattimore does.
Papa Ricky. This says splendid Nestor.
Interesting. Let's look it up. In the OG Greek.
Greek time.
Pew, 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 pew.
We might have a couple of these this episode.
Yeah.
So we have determined that in the Greek, the adjective used to describe Nestor is dio, related to dios, the same one that was used to describe Achilles, that is directly related to the word for God. So, yeah, godlike is a good translation.
Yeah, it's high praise. And Nestor is the oldest and wisest, pretty much. Like that's his role.
And he pulled that card in book 1 as well. He was like, when Achilles and Agamemnon were fighting, he was like, I've been in many of these wars. I've worked with people like older than you. Like, listen to me. Shut up, you children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has authority, but he doesn't have to do anything to have it. He just has it because when you get to a certain age, I think you just get it naturally.
Yeah.
And I think Agamemnon wishes he had that level of authority.
Yeah.
Like he wishes that he didn't have to, like, he wants to not work for it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Nestor's authority is an interesting companion to Odysseus's authority, whereas Odysseus's authority comes from strength. Like, obviously he's good in war. It comes from his not being godlike himself, but being favored by Athena, right? Athena really loves Odysseus, and she's the one who comes to him and like tells him like, you got to do this. And so he has kind of Athena's blessing and favor.
Yeah, pretty much a blanket Athena blessing for whatever he does.
Yeah.
And Odysseus is also often described as equal in cunning to Zeus. So his in terms of his strategic thinking, he is equal to a god like Zeus's level of strategy. Which is really high praise as well.
Yeah, and we'll obviously talk much more about Odysseus when we read the Odyssey. He's kind of a B tier character here.
Yeah, I was thinking this morning, it's like in the Marvel universe, Achilles is more of a Captain America situation, and then when you get to the Odyssey, it's like Iron Man, right? Like I think it has a similar vibe.
Okay,
that's all I gotta say about that.
I think another interesting thing to talk about, kind of big picture with this book, is the way it again sets up what's coming, because we know the book ends with these 2 catalogs of the armies, which is basically implying like, yep, the Greeks are ready to go. We're going to get kind of our first big fight scene coming up soon. Achilles is not involved. There's a massive scale, right? Like there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of ships, which imply then even more men on the Achaean side. And so like, this isn't just like a little thing. Like this is a big kind of massive event that's going to happen. And so there's, I think, a lot of foreshadowing sort of baked into this book.
It really builds a sense of suspense, I think.
Yeah, and I think the other component of foreshadowing is that for the audience listening originally, kind of everybody knew that the Greeks would win the war. And even today, I think, like most people know the story of the Trojan horse. Like kind of everybody knows, even if you've never read the Iliad, people know that the Trojan War goes poorly for the Trojans. And so there's this interesting, I think, like contrast between the army being so eager to leave, knowing that pretty soon they're going to be winning. And so we as the audience, when we see everybody leaving, obviously we know there's a lot more story. They're going to come back. But it's not just that they're going to come back. They're going to come back and be super victorious within a relatively short amount of time.
First, there's going to be a lot of casualties on both sides.
Yes.
And the audience is also expecting that.
Right.
So they're expecting this to be bloody. But they also are expecting that, like, their guys are going to come out on top.
Right. Yeah, and I think the other interesting component then too is Achilles was really, really prevalent in book 1, but he isn't in any of the conversations. He gets referenced a couple times, but he's not there. He's not coming to these meetings. His people aren't involved in any of the fracas, either running away or building up. And so his absence is this big question of like, how much will this affect things? Because obviously the reason Zeus is doing this is to get a bunch of the Greeks killed so that Achilles will sort of be proven right in his anger.
Yeah. It's even interesting how towards the end of the chapter, the book, when some of the Trojan troops are being introduced, they're introduced even with the foreknowledge that like later this guy is going to be killed by Achilles.
Yeah.
Like it says that like, and then there was this Trojan guy later, he's going to be in the river massacre.
Yeah.
And so I think people like, yeah, it's like terrible because it's war. But like, I think if you were listening to this, you'd be like, ooh, like it's just like kind of give you a little goosebumps probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You found another moment, I think, of interesting foreshadowing that we looked up in the Greek and found some interesting things. So let's get into our more planned Greek time segment.
Greek time. Pew, 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 pew. I'm trying to do an air horn sound. That's kind of where that came from.
Oh, I thought you were doing more like a Star Wars laser. Like.
Yeah. It's like an air horn, but it's like more Star Wars laser. So I wanted to talk about, it's around line 695 in the Greek. It's in the midst of the chaos, all the ships, it's talking about how Achilles he and his men are just unmoving, not going anywhere, not doing anything. And it says, he lay there suffering for her being Briseis, but soon he would rise up again.
Yeah, so it's this like idea, as we've just talked about, right? Achilles is not there, but it's reminding us he's not there and saying like, hey guys, remember Achilles is going to come back. So what seemed potentially interesting to you about the Greek here?
Well, in Greek, tenses are a little bit different than they are in English in that you can indicate how sort of certain or how concrete something in the future might be. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you can indicate this definitely will happen in the future versus I'm not so sure that this will happen in the future. And so So I was really interested to see how intense, maybe tense-wise, yes, that this passage is.
Cool, yeah. So I looked it up. We got to give a big shout out to the Perseus projects from Tufts University for all of their original Greek online documents that have really great resources. So we'll put it up on the screen if you're watching, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but the two most relevant words here are ansesthestai amelin. So we're actually going to take these in reverse order because in Greek, word order doesn't really matter. So especially in poetry, word order gets kind of funky, and we'll just deal with it. So amelin is related to the verb mello, which means to be destined. And amelin in form is the third person singular imperfect. So the imperfect tense is a past tense, but it's not, if you've studied French, there's a distinction between the imperfect and then the simple past and these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So the imperfect is kind of like ongoing events in the past.
Yeah.
So basically the third person singular there, he was destined. And then the other word, ansesthestai, is an infinitive, right? So to be destined usually takes an infinitive with it. To be destined to what? And so this is related to the verb anastemi. So histemi, the verb is one of the super irregular verbs in Greek that changes form like crazy. It means to stand. And then ana, the prefix means again. So the verb is literally like to stand again. But the form specifically here, the sesthai ending is the future infinitive, and it's actually also in the middle voice. So the future infinitive, we don't really have in English, but it's basically, right, he was destined to rise again in the future. The middle voice here is really interesting. We, again, don't really have this in English, where we have a clear distinction between the active and passive voice, right? So if I say, I baked the cake, that's active voice, or the cake was baked in the oven, that's passive voice. But middle voice, we usually translate with reflexive. So I baked myself. Obviously, baked was a bad choice for this, but it's like you did it to yourself. It wasn't you doing to something. It wasn't something doing it to you, but it was this, sort of self-imposed action. And so this verb, right, future infinitive, middle voice. So he was destined to raise himself in the future.
Yes. I wanted to point out that this line comes at the end of a chunk of text that puts a lot of emphasis on how Achilles is laying unmoving. So it's kind of this chunk of text that emphasizes how passive he's being, and specifically this kind of lazy lying down posture. But then it ends with this emphasis on standing up again. A very like active action that he's going to, do to himself. I don't know. I like that contrast.
Yeah.
I like that contrast.
Yeah, because there is that sense of something will change, something will provoke this. We don't yet know what will enact this change, but there will be a major shift in Achilles from the passive that he is now to something very active.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I find, I don't think this helps us understand this book any better, but honest Amy is, because it's so irregular and changes, is the same word that's used all throughout the New Testament as resurrection. So if you know anybody named Anastasia, that's the Greek, for resurrection. And so the voicing of that is also really interesting in sort of Christian theology, because whether we talk about Christ being raised from the dead, passive, or raising himself from the dead, middle, I think is often an interesting debate about sort of Trinitarian theology. Did Christ raise himself, or did God the Father raise him, where Christ was a corpse and was passive, or did he raise himself? Yeah. Here, Achilles, I'm not obviously saying Achilles equals Christ, because Achilles, this story was written before the Gospels, but it's an interesting parallel there to this idea of like resurrection, and who is also the one enacting the resurrection. Is it something that the person is doing of their own accord, or is it something that somebody else is kind of doing to them?
Yeah.
And here it's Achilles doing it to himself. He is enacting his own resurrection, or he will be enacting his own, right? It's very far in the future. And this is pretty sly, right? Like, again, it's not spoiling too much. The actual thing that this is foreshadowing, like, we're in book 2. It's not going to happen till like book 20, I think. I don't remember exactly, but it's a long ways away, guys.
It's a bit away, yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to be talking about this moment in like December.
Yeah. But I think that's also a good reminder that the audience listening to this back in the day, they too were excited to just get to the part where Achilles is back in the game again. And so it's the narrator's way of assuring everybody, don't worry, like, he's going to come back. Don't leave. Please stay and listen, like that kind of thing. Yeah.
To kind of take things in a different direction, our oblique angle that we want to approach this from, we both independently found the descriptions of Agamemnon's scepter and the usage of his scepter throughout the book as really interesting. And so we want to kind of look at this really small object and small moment and kind of think about how that sort of further elucidates these kind of bigger themes.
Yes. And talking about Agamemnon's scepter really goes hand in hand with talking about who's in control here.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read the little description of the scepter.
Sure.
I think it's good to default to the Wilson translation.
Yeah.
Because it's just so easily understood. This is around line 100 in the Greek. Lord Agamemnon stood up with the staff constructed by the craftsman god Hephaestus. Hephaestus had first given it to Zeus, the noble son of Cronus, and Zeus gave it to Hermes, lord and guide who once killed Argos, who gave it to the man who whipped his horses, Pelops, and Pelops gave it in his turn to Atreus, the shepherd of the people, who left it to Thyestes, rich in lambs. Thyestes passed it down to Agamemnon to hold and rule an archipelago and all of Argos. And then I like this little detail. It says, leaning on the staff, Agamemnon spoke. Lord Agamemnon spoke. So it's right before he gives his speech to all the troops. So it builds this scepter up to be this thing that's been passed, all the way from the gods. Yeah, literally from Zeus himself. It's come all the way down, right? Like, this power has been passed all the way to Agamemnon, and he's leaning on it. He is, he's hoping that the staff is what gives him authority.
Yeah.
Right? This power that he thinks has been passed to him,
It has been.
It has been.
Yeah.
But, perhaps he is leaning on it too much.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to read it again as a little bit of a kind of pathetic, like he needs this staff to give him authority because he can't actually garner any respect on his own. Again, we kind of saw Achilles make a fool of him a little bit. We saw him give a little temper tantrum. And now, right, he's kind of relying on these external signs of his authority to give him the power over his troops rather than his words. And again, we've contrasted that with Odysseus and with Nestor, who seem to be able to convince people with words. Agamemnon seems to be constantly losing this power. And so he's extra reliant on this kind of external proof. Like, no, I do have power, guys, right? Like, this is from Zeus. He gave me this. And so listen to me.
Yeah. And then later, when all chaos breaks out and Odysseus is like, I need to, create some control, I need to bring some control to the situation. It says, Odysseus approached the son of Atreus, Agamemnon, and took from him the everlasting scepter of his fathers. And then Odysseus literally goes up and takes the scepter, the symbol of power, from Agamemnon, and then takes control of the situation. It's pretty presumptuous.
Yeah.
And Agamemnon, it doesn't have anything about Agamemnon stopping him from doing this. Agamemnon lets him take the scepter. He doesn't, at least in the text, it doesn't say that he protested a little bit. He just lets Odysseus do it.
Yeah. And so then Odysseus, right, I think it's really fascinating. He's able to use this scepter both, again, with the authority, right? Like it's kind of this, I have bested the person, or the person has either given it to me willingly or I have taken it from him, kind of like, the Elder Wand in Harry Potter. Like I have conquered the previous owner of this, and so I have his authority now. But he doesn't just use it in that purely symbolic way, right? After Thersites gives his sort of, let's all go home and just peace out, and everybody's mad at him, Odysseus beats him with the scepter. And so the scepter no longer becomes a symbol of power, but an actual source of violence and control. I don't want to say that Odysseus is right for physically beating up someone else, but this is war times. And it seems like Odysseus is being portrayed as using the power in a more proper way than Agamemnon is. I don't know if the text is saying that Odysseus is the best, is the best leader, but he's definitely better than Agamemnon. And this is how he chooses to do it. Yeah. And I think also I found an interesting parallel then as well between Achilles and Thersites, right? So in some ways, Odysseus beating up Thersites is telling Agamemnon, hey, this is what you should have done to Achilles, right? Achilles was being insolent. He wasn't obeying you, and you just kind of let him walk away. Agamemnon never exerted his authority over Achilles and just kind of let it go. Whereas Odysseus is now this is how you sort of put people in their place when they are insolent and disobedient. And I think it's also interesting. I think this parallel is also there because the arguments that Thersites makes for why they should leave are very similar to the ones that Achilles makes. And so in some ways, Achilles is gone and Thersites is kind of his replacement in terms of the argument and the voice. But it's obviously this perversion because Achilles is beautiful and strong and everybody loves him. Yeah. And Thersites is ugly and everybody hates him. Yeah. Achilles definitely has pretty privilege. Right. Right. And so the absence of that is replaced by something worse, right? The worst version of Achilles is the only thing left there. And Odysseus is this is disgusting. Get out of here. Yeah. There is also a lot to do with how rank worked, I think. I'm not an expert in how rank worked for these troops, but Achilles is of a high enough rank that he's allowed, I think, to some extent, and Odysseus as well. They're close enough to Agamemnon in rank that they are allowed to challenge him in small ways, or big ones, I guess, and not really suffer consequences. But if you're more of a rando guy, you're definitely not allowed. I think that Thersites is of a low enough rank that he's definitely not allowed to do what he's doing. Yeah. And that's even, again, to go back to the catalog of ships, right, we don't get every single soldier. We get the leaders of each group. And then it's implied they've got all of these other sort of like meat shields, foot soldiers, cannon fodder with them. But like, it's really, here's our heroes, and then here's all of their henchmen and their whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. But even in, modern TV shows, it's a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like you follow your main guys that you root for.
Yeah.
And you just have to acknowledge that like all of the people around our main guys, like,
Yeah. It's the common trope in Star Trek that like the people in the red shirt are always the first ones to die when they go to a new planet.
Yeah, like there is in storytelling, I think there's this certain groups of characters are expendable for telling the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually in video games, right? Like NPCs. Yeah. I actually think calling someone an NPC has become a kind of modern slang term a little bit. And I think it's actually one of the worst insults you could give to somebody. I don't think it's actually used in like an incredibly pejorative way. I think when you actually think about like calling someone an NPC, like you're a non-player character, like you don't have real thoughts or real choices or volition. Like it's pretty harsh.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Thucydides is an NPC. He just gets to give his speech and then get beat up. And then the story gets to progress as a result.
Yeah. Something I also thought was really interesting in the catalog of ships is that you can pay attention to potentially like which leaders are a bigger deal than other leaders based upon the amount of ships that they're said to have. And obviously, I believe Agamemnon has the most. I could look it up real quick, but I think he has 100.
Okay. I also remember Odysseus has very few. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah. Odysseus only has 12.
Yeah.
Which is some of the least out of everyone. So I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I noted that too.
Yeah.
I don't have a grand conclusion from it, but I did find that kind of striking that, it's like this person had 80, this person had 60, this person had 40, and then Odysseus has like 12.
Yeah. So Lord Agamemnon has 100. Yeah. Odysseus has 12. Again, Odysseus's authority doesn't come from the amount of resources he has.
Right.
It's kind of what that's saying. Whereas Agamemnon leans upon how much resources he has. Yeah. So that is the end of our episode. Just a quick note that if you're listening and you have questions, please leave them in the comment section. And we'll try to start a little question answer mailbag section potentially at the end of these episodes. So yeah.
Yep. And if you are listening along, again, I'm recording the Butler translation as an audiobook that I've been posting on YouTube. So if you're interested in listening along, the YouTube video has the full text available to read along and then to hear me read it out loud.
And we're going to start putting the audiobook not just on YouTube, but we're going to have it in a audio only podcast feed as well. Not this podcast feed, but I'll have it linked. So if you don't have YouTube Premium and you like to listen to things with your screen off, you can do that.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, or while you're driving. So yeah, we're going to start doing that. So you don't have to have YouTube open all the time if you want to listen to the audiobook.
Yep. So we hope you're enjoying either reading along with us or just listening. We're grateful for your attention and your support of our channel. So we will see you next week for book 3.
Yeah, book 3. Happy reading, everyone.